Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of South County Summer Online Worship. We are glad that you're here today, and my name is Sue Strykosh, and I'll be your worship leader for today, or your worship associate for today. And we have a guest speaker, Susan Jordan, who I'll introduce shortly. Okay. We're going to start with our gathering music, which is hymn number 323 in the Gray Hymnal, and it's performed by Michael Gallup, our own Michael Gallup.
Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not that circle, make it wider still, till it includes embraces all the living. Come wonder at this love that comes to life, where words of freedom are with humor spoken, and people keep no score of wrong and guilt, but will that human bonds remain unbroken. Join then the movement of the love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly be themselves and on their feet, see eye to eye with laughter and elation.
I light this chalice is a symbol of our chosen faith. May it light remind us of the light inside each one of us, and may it guide us to live by our 8 principles. Today we welcome Susan Jordan, who has been a longtime UU, most recently a member of the UU Church of Medford, Mass. 5 years ago, Susan retired from a long career in the field of mental health and addiction treatment. 10 years earlier, she began 15 years as a prison volunteer at a state prison for men. Listening to the many stories of trauma, addiction, and family violence incarcerated men shared with her helped her to understand the origins of the street violence we see in teenagers on our streets and the pathway out of that lifestyle. Her Buddhist thinking and lifestyle has evolved out of her long affiliation with the AA and her work within the prison system. She'll present an alternate way of approaching forgiveness. Our opening words come from St. Francis of Assisi, and they're found in the Gray Hymnal, number 702. Where hate rules, let us bring love. Where sorrow, joy. Let us strive more to comfort others than to be comforted, to understand others than to be understood, to love others more than to be loved. For it is in the giving that we receive, and in the pardoning that we are pardoned. Please remain muted, but we'll repeat the covenant together. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the.
I'd like to invite you to share with me a moment of silent reflection. And near the end, I will read the Buddhist prayer of forgiveness and end with a chime. I will start with a chime and I will end with a chime. Join me in a moment of silence. If I have harmed anyone in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through my own confusions, I ask their forgiveness. If anyone has harmed me in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through their own confusions, I forgive them. And if there is a situation I am not yet ready to forgive, I forgive myself for that. For all the ways that I harm myself, negate, doubt, belittle myself, judge, or be unkind to myself through my own confusions, I forgive myself. When you think about the word forgiveness, what comes to mind? Do you think of someone you believe you cannot possibly forgive, someone whose behavior was so unacceptable that it cannot be forgiven? I would ask you to open your mind to a new way of looking at forgiveness, a way that will lead to healing and greater peace of mind. I will share with you a situation that occurred for me a while ago, one that taught me what I am now sharing with you. It happened at about 3:00 in a weekday in 2006. I don't remember the exact date, but I do remember where I was. Sitting at my computer, reading an email that would change my life. And I remember what I felt, where in my body I felt it, and what I thought. How could this be happening? I felt betrayed, hurt, angry, outraged. It hadn't happened to me, but to someone I felt very close to, someone I felt deserved more respect from people I had respected and whose values I had thought matched my own. Likely, we have all had a moment like this, a 9/11 moment, the one that shocked us and caused us to reevaluate our commitments and loyalties, forced us to question our beliefs. It was a terrible moment, a terrible feeling, and it caused me to embark on a journey I had never anticipated going on. I could not stand the way I felt. I couldn't stand the knot in my stomach that happened every time I thought about the situation and the people I had cared for, the people whose character I now questioned. I couldn't stand the sense of betrayal. And I did not have the power to change the situation or the other people. That was when I saw a book on my bookcase, one that I had never read, but whose title now jumped out at me. Forgiveness, a bold choice for a peaceful heart. Robin Kasarjian, the author, made a case for forgiveness, not because they deserved to be forgiven, but because I needed to stop the hurt I was feeling. Forgiveness does not mean we forget, but it does mean that we let go of the hurt. It means that we let go of the resentment that rents space in our minds. I had not intended to make a study of forgiveness. I had never been a person who held a lot of grudges, but I had a huge grudge now, and I was desperate to stop the pain, the ache in my heart, the feeling of nausea, and the sadness, the tears. I wanted that to stop. So I did not see another way. And I knew this to be a moment that would either make or break me. In such times, we can either sit in a place of feeling victimized, or we can find a way to rise above the moment, to learn the lesson we are being given, to open our minds and hearts to a new reality. We can learn resilience, not an easy lesson. We can learn humility, even harder. Coincidentally, or maybe not, a door opened wide for me several months later. That was a door inviting me to get involved in prison work. One of the first volunteers I met was Richard Nethercutt. He was a former employee of the State Department, a buttoned up Concord intellectual, about 70 when I first met him. In the Sunday morning sharing that happens at the Alternative to Violence weekends, Dick shared with me and the other participants in the large circle his story of betrayal and loss. He told about how his daughter, at age 20, had been raped and murdered a number of years earlier. At first, he had felt totally traumatized, guilty for not having protected her. Angry at the perpetrator of this awful crime, but he had made his way over time to forgiveness. He had spoken on Chronicle about his journey away from anger and despair. The behavior of the offender was abhorrent, but the offender, the person who suffered from his own history of trauma and abuse, was forgivable. Hurt people hurt people. Dick became my mentor, and he gave a wonderful gift as well to the incarcerated men and women he befriended over many years. There are many day-to-day situations that happen in all of our lives, situations that don't rise to the level of the kind of trauma that Dick had dealt with, but situations that cause us to hold grudges. I will share one such story. It is a story I learned about when I was doing prison work. It is called The Law of the Garbage Truck and was written by David J. Polay in a book by the same name. One day, I hopped in a taxi and took off for the airport. We were driving in the right lane when suddenly a car jumped out of a parking space right in front of us. My taxi driver slammed on his brakes, skidded, and missed the other car by just inches. The driver of the other car whipped his head around and started yelling at us. My taxi driver just smiled, waved at the guy, and I mean, he was really friendly. So I asked, "Why did you just do that? This guy almost caused an accident and sent us to the hospital." This is when my taxi driver taught me what I now refer to as the law of the garbage truck. He explained that many people are like garbage trucks. They run around full of garbage, full of frustration, full of anger, full of disappointment and rage. As their garbage piles up, they need a place to dump it. And sometimes they'll dump it on you. Don't take it personally. Just smile, wave, wish them well, and move on. Don't pick up their garbage and spread it to other people in your life, whether at work, at home, or to the people you don't even know on the streets. Always remember that good people do not let garbage trucks take over their day. Life's too short to wake up in the morning with regrets. So love the people who treat you right and forgive the ones who don't. Always be yourself, because the people who matter won't mind, and the ones who do mind don't matter. How often do we let garbage trucks run over us? And how often do we take that garbage and spread it to other people? We too often take things like this personally. What other people do is not about us. The person who we think is a bad driver is not doing it to persecute us. That's the way they drive, period. It's about them. We do not have to take this or any other situation personally. If we can imagine that, we can begin to question the conclusions we come to when assessing any situation in which we feel disrespected. We can choose to let it go. We can choose to decide that the other, the one who cut us off, or the one who seems to dismiss us or judge us, we can decide that they are having a bad day. that they came from a childhood in which bad things happened to them. And we can decide that the outer behavior does not reflect the inner self. There are no bad people in this kind of scenario. We need to learn to forgive what we cannot change, especially all other people. This is the same forgiveness we use when trying to recover from the traumatic experiences in our life. Robin Kasarjian said in her book on forgiveness, "Forgiveness is an act of self-interest. It is a gift we give ourselves." It is a gift we give ourselves. Forgiveness does not mean that we don't hold others accountable. It does not mean that we think the bad driver is actually right in this situation. It does not mean we need to be best friends with the offender. It does not mean that we are being passive, that we are letting others take advantage of us. It does not mean that letting the other off the hook. It just means we are choosing to no longer suffer. We choose to stop the negative thoughts. We stop focusing on what happened. We clear our mind of blaming and shaming thoughts about the other. We choose to be happy and let go of having to be right. We can choose that in every situation. When I was struggling to make peace with the very upsetting situation I described earlier, I spent a lot of time thinking about the people who had made a decision I felt was wrong and lacked integrity. I came to believe that they had seen the same situation differently than I had and had come to a different conclusion. They believed that what they were doing was right. They looked at the world through a different lens than I did. That did not make them bad people. I could persist in focusing on my belief that they were wrong and I was right. And in so doing, I would be relinquishing my power to determine my own inner state to the people with whom I was feeling angry. A grudge is a heavy thing to carry. I needed to let it go or be dragged. Anger, seeking revenge, holding grudges keeps us tied to those we are in conflict with. Holding on to this perception, choosing not to forgive, is like drinking poison and hoping the other will die. We can hold on to unforgiving thoughts and we will suffer. When I began to learn how to forgive, my life began to change in significant ways. I realized I could choose exactly how I would feel by taking control of my thoughts. I needed to decide to forgive, and I was able to for maybe a minute, and then the anger returned. I had to decide again and again. Forgiveness takes a lot of practice. For me, having peace of mind was my foremost goal. I could not carry resentment and grudges, hate and anger in my heart if I wanted to have peace of mind. So minute by minute, one day at a time, I was able to develop the habit of forgiving. At first, it was deliberate. I had to be vigilant about my thoughts. And over time, it has become second nature. Like any habit, we practice over and over. For me, it is always more important to be happy than it is to convince the other that I am right. Forgiveness becomes a way of life, a way of thinking about the huge tragedies happening all around us, as well as the bad drivers on the highway. It's all the same. We decide not to let our peace of mind be controlled by what other people do or don't do. We take back our power. We take back our joy, our sense of confidence and freedom. We replace the fear and judgments in our heart with love and acceptance of ourselves and all other people. Namaste. And now I think we are going to join silently in the closing hymn, which is number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do.
You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing. Oh Lord, you gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance. Oh Lord, you gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you gotta laugh, oh Lord. You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. 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 You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you gotta shout, oh Lord. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
Our closing words today come from a poem by Mary Oliver called Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles in the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and clear pebbles of rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. We now extinguish this chalice but not its light. That we take with us out into the world, sharing it with those we encounter on our journey. Now we'll sing our closing song 3 times. You're welcome to unmute if you like, or you can remain muted, which I will because I don't sing that well. So here we go. Carry the flame.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
It was great to see everybody.